They would tap. Oh, this part sounds horrifying. As if it could get worse.
Let's say it all sounds horrifying, Caitlin.
So like they would put the ice pick type tool through the eye socket, and then they would tap on the end of it with a hammer to break through the layer of bone to get to the brain, to swirl everything around and cure people.
Yeah, did it cure people? No!
How terrifying. So they'd stick it through your eye, and then they'd just like, they're hanging a picture on the wall, like tap, tap, tap with a hammer to like work their way through the bone.
That feels like it's right.
Oh my God, no. And then they would just swirl.
If you guys haven't listened to that episode, you should, because there were times where they tried to get photo ops during the lobotomies, and patients would die because they'd be like looking at the camera and not paying attention, and they would wiggle the thing in like the right way, way, quote unquote, where they would bleed out. Yeah, it's terrible.
Gives me a headache.
Lobotomies are all... That was not pun intended. Gives me a headache. Or was it?
It really does make my head feel funny, but it was kind of pun intended.
Yes. But anyways, lobotomies were never helpful. So there you go.
The whole thing. Okay. I'm just going to ask, how long would you guess a prefrontal lobotomy would take?
I'm not the right person to answer this.
Well, I'm going to say if I would be like, like an hour. Right? Like,
it makes sense. Like, they'd have to lie them down, do the thing. Yeah, an hour is probably pretty good.
10 minutes.
They just jam that in there?
Yep. Prefrontal lobotomies at Danvers on average took about 10 minutes per patient.
That's not sanitary. They were doing something. Well, they were doing something wrong. They were doing something wrong. Not okay.
10 minutes.
Also, for some reason, every time you say the name of this institution, I think of Dan and Yogurt. I don't know why, but like, then it's obviously phonetic. Why? But I can't stop thinking about yogurt.
Okay. And moving on. Like your hospital, visitors were welcomed, and the hospital didn't try to hide anything because you didn't fucking have to.
Yeah, you're like, these are people who are crazy. Look, they're being crazy in that room over there.
I think you can tell my level of anger about a case based on how many F-bombs I drop. This one's a lot. This one's a lot of anger. I'm so mad.
I'm so mad.
Okay. So visitors in the 1940s reported that like they would come in to see lobotomies or whatever. And they said that after the lobotomies, or like patients they were told had a lobotomy, would literally just wander around the halls aimlessly. Like, and you talked about this in your medical episode, but if it didn't kill them, it essentially turned them into like a zombie, which back then they saw as them being cured, or at least maintained, for lack of a better word. Like,
yeah, they were subdued.
Yes.
So great.
And at this point, so before, I remember I talked about it was kind of a revolving door, quote unquote, but when they were actually helping people, they would help people, get them on their feet, and they would go back out into the world.
Well, and that was pre-lobotomy.
Right. At this point, no patients were allowed to leave. So they were essentially like held hostage, like, but they also couldn't like speak up and say they wanted to leave after fucking lobotomy, or like tied up in a straitjacket. So
yeah, because they would just ignore them for 5 days in the room or whatever. Like, that you couldn't tell anyone anything.
Yeah. So which leads to more overcrowding because there's no, but they're not, like now it's just a total shit show. Danvers also used hydrotherapy, and you can see.
What is that? I don't know what that is.
You can see pictures of the bathtub they use, but basically, so there's all these creepy bathtubs with tile, like there are these really weird red bathtubs with like tile. And then the tile went in the back. Like you can see the pictures. Like there's not a lot of pictures of the inside of Danvers, which is also creepy and tells me, it's shady.
It's bad if they're not taking pictures.
But hydrotherapy, essentially, they would put patients in ice cold water.
Oh no!
For therapy, and sometimes they would leave them there for an entire day. They would just keep putting ice in the tub and keeping it cold, and make people sit in ice water all day long.
I would lose my mind.
Yep.
Oh my gosh.
Yep.
Oh, that's
therapy
horrible.
My ass.
That'd be so bad for your body.
Now is a good time to tell you that Danvers didn't just fill up with mentally ill patients. When Danvers had... this makes it worse too. Like when Danvers had such a good reputation, it didn't just become a place where people, like families, would send their mentally ill children or relatives. The elderly were sent there.
No.
Alcoholics, drug addicts, criminals. They just started fucking sending anyone and everyone here. Everyone.
My God,
so, So they are performing lobotomies on elderly people and drug addicts and alcoholics and criminals just because they are there.
I don't want this to sound bad. I don't want to say it makes sense to do lobotomies on people who are experiencing mental diseases. that makes more sense than somebody who is not experiencing mental diseases, who their family didn't know where to put. They don't need lobotomies.
It literally just became a way to subdue them.
Yes. Yeah. Nobody needs a lobotomy first. No. Believe me.
But like, you're right. Like, they justified it with mentally ill, but then they were like, fuck, we have all these old people and criminals and drug addicts.
Exactly.
If we just give them all lobotomies, they'll just wander around silently and not be a problem.
Yeah. Oh.
Lobotomies were used on all of these patients just to keep them contained and well-behaved, like we just are saying.
Ugh.
Patient after patient after patient died, sometimes not found for days because they were forgetting about it. So they would lock them in rooms, or patients would just wander the halls. Like, there was one case where a child was sent here, like a teenager, I think it was like 15, and he was trying to escape, and he crawled. And this was actually, I guess I should cite this to you, on the Danvers...
their history
.org, yeah, the history page. There's an interview with someone who worked there. But the interview is from 2005, so it's obviously like later. And I'll tell you how long Danvers stayed open. There's a kid who crawled into the air ducts and got stuck and died in there and wasn't found until they started to smell him. So like, people, it's just horrible.
Oh my goodness.
Doctors began using lobotomies to cure daydreams, backaches, and depression.
No.
Which to me is AKA they just threw a reason in there to give random people lobotomies.
I hate that.
Eventually, these reports of neglect and abuse began to surface as more people came to visit and spoke up. And with suspicious deaths, missing patients they couldn't account for, violent assault allegations, like all of this stuff was coming to the surface. So in the 1980s, literally 1980s, this place was built in 1878.
That's insane. Like Willowbrook, I thought that was crazy. It was until the late 1980s everyone was out. But like this place was like, what? That's close to 100 years
it's like 100 years. Yeah. So in the 1980s, the patients are moved from this location to a more modern building nearby. Danvers finally, and all other asylums, were officially closed in 1992. I think that's around the time, early 90s, when most of them closed. Yeah. The building was not kept up, so it began to deteriorate. Yeah. And it is a beautiful, like, eerie, creepy, like, Gothic building. They're weak today. Danvers became known as the haunted castle on the hill that it was kind of like the kids would dare each other to go to. In 2005, it was purchased to be used for apartments and condos and was demolished mostly except for the main building, the main admin building in 2006. But then in 2007, so they demolished most of it and started to build apartments. A mysterious fire broke out and burned a majority of the new construction. Which is like, that's what I found on like the ghost sites, because like they could not find how this fire started. And so it surfaced all these like, it's all the people who died, like coming, you know, like it just makes it more eerie.
Ghost stories fascinate me, or like unknown, like why are things moving, or like,
but so it's like they demolished this thing. Plus you remember it's on Hawthorne's
the
like
Salem witch trials.
Yeah, there's so much history to this land. Today, the main building is fixed up. From what I could tell, it's being used as apartments.
Okay. I wouldn't want to live there, but maybe, I bet people don't even know. I bet people don't know the history that live there. Like, why would you?
You wouldn't know that. Well, like, even if you know it's an old insane asylum, you don't know
the details unless you look it up.
Well, most of it was demolished and rebuilt, except the main building. But like when you look at the modern view, there were like cars parked outside, like a FedEx, like it looked apartment-y, and that's what it had been purchased for. So that's what I assume. The only thing there that really is a reminder of the horrifying past, there's 2 nearby cemeteries with 770 buried who all came from the asylum, but none of them have names. And I should have written down the exact quote, but I stole this from, I'm going to give...
Paraphrase
it was so basically this article was saying, and it's very true, that even in death the hospital didn't give a shit about these patients, which is true, because they just buried them in a mass grave and they're not named, like not a mass grave like all in one, but you know, mass cemetery. Okay, so let's switch to Batman on a lighter note.
Now let's talk about Batman. That's not a difficult transition.
It's not every day I get to talk about Batman.
Just unbuckle your buckles here and take a quick transition.
No breather
here.
in between. So Arkham Asylum was created by Batman writer Dennis O'Neil in 1974. And this was, I didn't know all this until I looked this up for this research, but Arkham was named after a town in horror stories written by H.P. Lovecraft in books he had written.
Oh.
Like Arkham was the make-believe town he did. So the Batman writer stole that. Not bar, whatever.
We're not meaning to make anyone feel bad here.
Lovecraft created Arkham to be like a pseudo Salem, Massachusetts. It was essentially like the same thing. And the inspo, like the creepiness came from Danvers. In the early days of the comics, Arkham Asylum is portrayed as a little more, it's kind of like a whimsical. But now if you watch like newer ones, and I looked at side-by-sides, and the Danvers building is very similar to the Arkham Asylum. Yeah.
That is fascinating.
Yeah. So there's my Batman story and the creepy ass terrifying story of Danvers that stayed open for like 100 goddamn years.
Caitlin meant, God.
Which is 200 years too many.
Yes. Caitlin mentioned this briefly, but like all the asylums I stumbled upon before I picked one, like had history similar to that. Not necessarily lobotomy or that, you know, there are differences, but like they're all
terrible.
They're all pretty bad.
We could have picked anyone and they all would have made you go like, what the fuck?
Yeah. And we do have psychiatric institutes now. And they have more appropriate names. And they are like a lunatic or whatever.
St.
Like
Danvers Lunatic Hospital.
Yeah, that's terrible. Things have changed a lot since these original insane asylums. But there have been shows about this, like American Horror Story has done. Obviously, it's exaggerated.
Have you ever watched One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest?
Yes.
So good.
You know where that's takes place in?
I don't remember now.
Oregon.
Oh.
It was filmed in Oregon, too.
No one
and
cares.
written by a...
Just kidding.
You're the one who brought it up.
It's a good movie.
Yeah, it is
I'm a big Jack Nicholson fan.
Yeah, it's really good. Yeah, man. Asylums. That's some other breed of...
It's just a good topic choice.
Yeah.
Let's pat ourselves on the back for this one.
Everyone, while you're at home, please also pat your backs. Thanks, guys.
Pat your back for listening. You guys didn't do any work.
Yeah.
Just kidding. Oh my God. I totally do come off... as the asshole, but I promised you it is Sarah.
Oh my God. Wow. They really believe you now.
I could give examples.
Please don't.
Okay. I'm going to go first with my joke.
Okay, but before you do, stop it. I do want to let you guys know that this episode comes out at the very end of our special for Patreon. So if you join Patreon by the end of April, you only have a little bit of time left, you'll get a goodie bag sent to you, and we'll send it either at the very end of April or into May, depending on current environment. But we have all the stuff. We just need to put them together.
Yes.
So you can check out our Patreon at patreon.com/luminalpod. You can sign up for any amount. There are different tiers. And if you're already a Patreon member and you feel sad, you can just up your pledge and you'll automatically qualify and we'll send you a goodie bag. That's all I wanted to say.
Okay. And I'm going to add to that. So this was supposed to be a surprise, but now that it's moved a little bit. So Sarah and I are going to get a fun like photo shoot done. Yep. I've never had a professional photo shoot. So it'll be my first time. So Sarah will have to tell me what to do.
We're doing promo photos.
Yes. Taken by Susie Goodrick.
She is incredible. And her husband is a good friend of ours because...
he's our sound guy, Mike.
Yes. And Susie, if you like the pictures of my wedding on our Instagram, she's the one who took those.
And the reason I say that, so our little surprise... we're going to sound like assholes. We were going to sign our promo photos because we're so cool and famous and put them in the boxes. But obviously with the current environment, it is in everyone's best interest to put the pictures off.
Yeah.
But what we will do is save the information and the name of everyone we send a box to, whether it's the full package or the mini package. And once we get the photos, we will then mail you a photo.
Yep.
Because they would have been in the boxes. So you will get one of those later. Surprise ruined. Sorry.
That does mean you'll get 2 little special things from us. So,
yeah. And you'll get a beautiful ass picture. That is us.
It won't be an ass picture, but
you'll get a beautiful ass face picture.
And then the only other thing before jokes is if you haven't left us a review, please consider doing that. It will take 2 minutes of your time. It means a lot. We've gotten some 1-star reviews. If you want to leave that, that's fine. But also we could do with some non-1 stars. So thanks.
What do you get when you cross Batman with a tree?
What?
Spruce Wayne.
That's actually really cute.
I know. Get it? 'Cause his name is Spruce Wayne.
Yeah, we get it.
Spruce Wayne. Because it's a tree.
Does anyone else need more assistance from Caitlin? Your laugh makes me laugh.
Okay, sorry. You may now tell your joke. Look, I'm already laughing at your joke.
No, it's not about me. Okay, so I lost my watch the other day. And I was going to find my missing watch.
You didn't have the time?
Shut up. Shut up.
What
But
does,
I couldn't find the time. I just want to finish my show.
what does Batman do for exercise?
Your mom.